Bonsoir, en direct du Palais de Tokyo, notre première direct. On est en compagnie avec John Sanborn, qui est l'artiste aujourd'hui toute la journée sur la chaîne, et Steven Sarrazin, qui va lui poser quelques questions.
In English.
Yes, sure.
Okay, so John, we're at the Palais de Tokyo, and there's this amazing Tino Segal show going on. It's a show that is happening in real time, all the time. And Palais de Tokyo is right across the Musée d'Art Moderne de la Ville de Paris, which I think is where it all begins for you.
Yes, I was a kid, 17, 18. I was living in Paris, working for a film company, and somebody had said, oh, there's a big exhibition of video art opening. And I didn't know what video art was. I thought this could be interesting. And I walked in. The show had been organized by Danny Bloch and Suzanne Paget. And I saw the works of Namjoon Paik, Wolf Ostel, Roland Baladi, the Vasulkas, Ed Emschwiller, all for the first time. And I said, what is this? And a tall American man named Don Foresta said, this is video art. And I said, I think I'd like to do this. And that's how it started.
So these were all artists who were exploring the medium, the possibilities of the medium, but at the same time in the United States, and I think you'd started by making sculpture. And so meanwhile in America, there were all these other artists who were performance artists or installation artists, people ranging from Richard Serra to Bruce Nauman to Akanshi, who had also started using medium, perhaps not in the same, of course, definitely not in the same way that the Paik, Vasulka, Emschwiller clan was doing. Why did you choose to go the way that Paik, Vasulka, and so forth went rather than,
That's an interesting question. What fascinated me then and still really excites me is the ability for video to transform. Nauman, Akanshi, others, I felt they were extending what they had been doing in other media with video, which is great. What I saw with the Vasulkas, Emschwiller, Paik, was something completely different, very unique, only could exist in video. And as opposed to recording and playing back, this was a different level of creative invention. This was for me also kind of a definition, different than experimental film, which I also liked. And for me, even right now, that transformative quality is what attracts me and engages me and really inspires me.
Well, you were part of what I like to call a second wave, second generation of artists that included in America our friend Dara Birnbaum, Bill Viola, Gary Hill, a little later Tony Orsler. What was it like? What were the relationships like back then before, let's say, before crossing over into notoriety?
There was a time in the 1980s when I knew every video artist on the planet. It was a relatively small club, and these were the artists who came into making art through video as opposed to making video as an approach or an addendum to art. And again, I don't disparage one or the other. I think they're both very interesting. A good friend of mine for many years was William Wegman, who had been a photographer and had done sketches and drawings and paintings. When it was a small club and I knew everybody, there was a tremendous sharing of information. At one point, Gary Hill lived up in Rhinebeck, New York, and I was fooling around with Steve Rutt and Bill Etra and their video synthesizer. And I got on a train with a box that Rutt had given me to go bring to Gary and say, hey, do you want to play with this? Same thing with Bill and Dara. I mean, I shot for both of them. I edited some stuff for Dara. It was a very free time. I possibly had less ego banked than some other artists because I felt like if I knew something, I was very eager to share it with someone else. At the time, it was, again, a small club, and the price of admission was energy.
Well, many of those artists went into installations in the 80s. Your path took a different direction. At the beginning, all of you are having works shown at MoMA, at Pompidou, at the Kitchen, and then our friends like Gary, Bill, and so forth are branching out into installation. But you're making more television work during those years. In the 80s, you're working a lot with PBS and introducing high culture and how to show high culture dance, modern dance, contemporary music to an audience. Why did you go that way?
Television when I was a kid was really important to me. Still is important to me in many ways. Episodic storytelling is as old as time. I made some installations and I enjoyed doing it, but the time base frustrated me. And what I really liked about both PBS and MTV was the manufacture of time and the manipulation of time. And so when I work with dance, when I work with performers, they have to be very comfortable with the fact that I'm going to edit the living crap out of what they do, or I'm going to construct something brand new out of bits and pieces that we decide could go together, but we're not quite sure how. And it's at the very beginning, it was television that I wanted to make, as much as it was video art that I wanted to make. And I was absolutely convinced, for example, when I did Perfect Lives with Bob Ashley, that we were going to make revolutionary television. And that revolution was going to be televised, appreciated, understood, funded, and to a certain extent it happened. I would venture to say that without Nam June Paik, you would not have YouTube.
Okay. After, yes, we are.
Look, we're on here. And first wave, second wave.
Yes. After TV, something big happens in your life. You're going to leave New York and you're going to move to the West Coast. And you're going to be just on the cusp of this digital revolution. You're going to be a consultant for many of these emerging companies. And you're going to be, and I remember because we worked a lot together, we started working a lot together during those years when we started digitizing video and being able to do effects. Did you see that coming?
I spent thousands of hours and hundreds of thousands of dollars in television studios. I tried to get as close to the equipment and the technology as possible. I didn't want to get inside the circuit the way some artists wanted to. I appreciated that, and I worked with image processing. What I wanted was the control and the ability to paint or compose. And doing it analog was very frustrating. So in the early days of digital tools made by big companies, I would say like Quantel or Ampex or even Sony, they would always ask, why would you want to do that? And I would say, oh, because we could do this, we could do this, we could do... They would, oh, okay, we think we understand. And then they would, a year later, they would have a device that did something like that. When I moved to the West Coast, I got closer to a sense of authorship that wasn't beholden to a previous technology, a previous generation, some other art form. And when I was working with Apple and Adobe in the early days, I felt as much a designer and an art director as I did a video artist, because a lot of what I was doing was composition. And naive at the time, I imagined, but I never realized that your phone now would allow you to do everything that would have cost thousands of dollars then. And except that clearly my impulse was the impulse of the general public, which is to create, own, distribute, if that's the right word, media.
So you spent nearly 2 decades in that world, and in the last couple of years, during those years, especially during the last decade, you used a lot of that technology to make very personal works, autobiographical works, diary-like works about family, about issues in America. And in many ways, your work has always touched on those things, even in the dance and the music things. It's still exploring the good side and the dark side of America. But in the last couple of years, you and I have reunited and worked on a number of exhibitions as curator and artist, and which have taken us from Berlin to Bangkok, and now we're in France. A large show of yours that I curated has just opened in Bourges. What triggered the desire to, not only return, let's say, to an art context, an art world, but to really making installations?
I'd had a lot of ideas for works over the years. I got very involved in Silicon Valley, and I found I was extremely good as a creative director for public companies, and that was something that would compensate me very well. So I got to the point in my life at my age where I decided I could retire from business and do what I want. During those years, I'd made a lot of feature-length linear works, autobiographical, comical, whatever. And I showed them to another curator, John Hanhart, who had been at the Whitney, then the Guggenheim, and then the Smithsonian. And he was very complimentary. He said, "Oh, I really like these a lot." He said, "But you know, when you were younger, you worked not just with time, but you also worked with space." And he said, I thought you did very, very good things there." And he said, "You might want to think about going back there again." So I thought, "Oh, that's interesting." And then, yes, in talking to you and working with you, it seemed like the temporal and the electronic could be something I could have fun with, make statements in, and also not have to invest as much time and energy as I was in these feature-length pieces. Because they're going to play on television, they're going to play at film festivals, but they're not necessarily going to allow me to extend myself. And so the installation works, particularly the works now in Bourges, allowed me to really take some very elemental ideas and express them in pretty grand fashion. The show is in Bourges, France. It opened Thursday and runs till December 22nd. Also want to put a plug in for the SFE Souvenirs from Earth souvenir box, which you should be able to get very soon at your local museum. And very thanks to Marcus Kreis and for inviting us here. It's very, very wonderful. But yes, I feel like I'm on another phase of my existence, and that is thrilling to me because I'm going in places I may not be comfortable in at first, may not be successful in, but I'm taking more chances, I'm taking more risks, and that's, for me, part of an evolution that I have been waiting to embark on for quite a while.
I think that there are two interesting things with your, let's say, return to the art world. I guess for me the first one is after such a path, a trajectory of starting in the art world, of moving to television, of being in Silicon Valley, will the art world let you back in? Because I think the answer is yes. But I think as a theoretical question, when a creator, when a maker has this kind of trajectory, which is sort of a singular trajectory and not typical, and by typical, I don't mean again to I've worked with Bill and I've worked with Gary for a long time, and but that issue for me is very interesting. The of having done this, and this, and then returning to the art fold, I think is an interesting issue. And the other one, I think, is that because of, let's say, the success of such friends as Bill and Gary over the last few years, over the last 20 years or so, that there have been artists whose works have been not so much forgotten, but simply never shown to a younger generation. And I think that there is the moment now for young critics, young curators, and of course art students to discover your early works of Dara's, early works of all of those artists, Klaus in Germany and Marcel Odenbach, and that there's a nice coincidence, I think, now at the moment.
I don't know if I was ever really in the art world. I was in the video art world. I was in the television world. I was in Silicon Valley. I did startups. I made games. I did punch-ups on sitcoms. I never really considered myself in the art world. So my perspective is any world that I'm welcome to is great. If what I'm doing now is seen as art and it leads to greater understanding of what I did before, fantastic. If I get hit by a bus later tonight, I'm going to be very happy about a lot of things, one of which is having put up some really strong works in the last couple of years. If in fact one makes one's world, and that is coincident with another world, then yes, it'd be great if what I'm doing now is both recognized and celebrated. But I'm really doing it for me. I want to go from one state of being to another, and that's been my principal interest now for quite a while. Marcus is telling us to wrap up, so you get the last.
Well, in closing, we're seeing on this little box excerpts from Perfect Lives by Robert Ashley, which John directed, and Perfect Lives is one of the unknown monuments of the history of video art. It's a work that has rarely been shown in its entirety, but it is truly a masterpiece. It's as important as Bill's I Do Not Know What It Is, I Am Like, and it's longer, probably, than Bill's video. Oh, don't say that.
But entertaining because we desired it to be.
Yes, I understand. But what I wanted to say in closing is that at the Bourges show, you've collaborated with a young composer named Dorian Wallace, and you've co-created an opera, a video opera, called The Temptation of St. Anthony, which I think also is a groundbreaking piece. And it's very exciting more than 30 years later to see, after something like Perfect Lives, The Temptation of St. Anthony. And for video and media aficionados as well as contemporary music aficionados, they should run to Bourges and go to the Palais Jacques-Cœur and see just, well, the scale of the piece, the resonance of the piece in that incredible space, and just how gorgeous a work it is. You're welcome. All right.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, John.
Souvenirs from Earth. Well, that was good.